She said it at a family dinner. Not quietly, not in the careful, considered way of someone who has thought about the weight of their words before releasing them into a room full of people, loudly, with the particular confidence of someone who has been saying things like this for so long that she has stopped, noticing the effect they produce. Elena is just a secretary, my Aunt Patricia said. It's a perfectly respectable job. I'm not saying it isn't, but let's be realistic about what we're comparing here. The table went quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The particular suspended quiet of a room full of people who have heard something they are not sure how to respond to, who are doing the rapid calculation of whether to address it or let it pass, and what the cost of each choice is. I was sitting 4 seats down from her. I picked up my wine glass. I took a slow sip, and I said nothing. Not because I had nothing to say. I had a great deal to say, but I had learned, through 38 years of being Patricia's niece, through the particular education of growing up in proximity to someone who reduces people to their smallest possible version and calls it realism, that the moment of the comment is never the right moment to respond. The right moment always comes later. My name is Elena Marsh. I am 38 years old. I had worked for 11 years at a firm called Hartley & Associates, one of the most significant financial consulting firms in the region, the kind of organization whose client list includes names that appear in business publications, and whose decisions move money in quantities that most people will never encounter in their entire lives. My official title was Executive Assistant to the Managing Director. My Aunt Patricia had decided, approximately 11 years ago when I took the position, that this meant secretary. It did not mean secretary. What it meant, what it had meant for 11 years, was that I was the person who knew everything, not in the peripheral, supportive way of someone who manages schedules and answers phones. In the operational, substantive way of someone who had, over 11 years, become so embedded in the decisions and relationships and institutional knowledge of that firm that the managing director had told me, on 3 separate occasions, that the firm could survive losing almost anyone except me. Patricia did not know this. I had never corrected her. Not because the correction was not available, it was. Not because I lacked the words, but because I had understood, early in my career, that what you allow people to underestimate about you is one of the most powerful things you possess. That the person who is dismissed as just a secretary moves through rooms with a freedom that the person who announces themselves never has. I had moved through rooms for 11 years, and the reason I said nothing at that dinner table, the reason I picked up my wine glass and took a slow sip, and let Patricia's words sit in the air without answering them, was not patience. It was strategy, because something had happened that week, something that Patricia did not know about, something that would, in approximately 10 days, make the comment she had just made at this dinner table extremely relevant to her life in a way she was not prepared for. I put my wine glass down. I looked at Patricia's son, Marcus, my cousin, 35 years old, sitting directly across from his mother, and was looking at his plate with the particular focused attention of someone who is working very hard at not making eye contact with anyone. He already knew. He had known for 3 days, and he had said nothing to his mother, because Marcus, whatever his other qualities, understood something about me that his mother had never bothered to learn. That just a secretary was not the whole sentence. Let me take you back 3 days. To a Tuesday afternoon in the conference room on the 14th floor of Hartley & Associates. To a meeting that had been scheduled for 6 weeks. To a table that seated 12 people, and that was, on that Tuesday afternoon, occupied by 8 of them, the firm's senior leadership, 2 representatives from the largest client account the firm had ever managed, and me, and Marcus, who was one of the 2 client representatives, who had walked into that conference room on Tuesday afternoon and stopped when he saw me standing at the head of the table, not because my presence was unexpected. I was always at these meetings, but because of what I was holding, the presentation I had prepared, the documentation that represented 6 months of analysis and strategic recommendation that bore my name as primary author, and that was, as the managing director had told me the previous week, the most comprehensive client strategy document the firm had produced in 5 years. Marcus had looked at the document, then at me, then at the managing director. Elena prepared this, the managing director said, not as an explanation, as a statement of fact delivered in the tone of someone who expects it to be received as the unremarkable information it was. Marcus had sat down. He had read the document during the meeting, carefully, with the particular attention of someone who works in finance and understands what they are looking at. He had asked 3 questions. Good questions, specific, analytically sound, the questions of someone who has understood what they are reading and wants to test the edges of it. I had answered all 3. After the meeting, in the corridor, while the managing director was speaking to the other client representative, Marcus had found me. "How long have you been doing this?" he said. "This specific type of work?" I said, "About 6 years. The broader role, 11. He looked at me for a moment. "My mother thinks you're a secretary," he said. "I know," I said. "She's wrong," he said. "I know that too," I said. He was quiet for a moment. "Why haven't you corrected her?" he said. I looked at him. "Because the right moment hasn't arrived," I said. He had nodded slowly, with the particular nod of someone who has understood something they did not previously understand. And then 3 days later, he had sat at his mother's dinner table and looked at his plate while she called me just a secretary, because he understood that the moment had not arrived yet, but it was coming. The thing that Patricia did not know, that Marcus had known since Tuesday and had carefully not mentioned to his mother, was that the client, account he represented, was in the process of making a significant decision, a restructuring of their advisory relationship, a decision about which firm would manage their strategic financial consulting going forward, a decision worth an annual fees, over the 5-year contract being considered, more money than most people encounter in a lifetime. The decision had been scheduled for the following Friday, and the document that was going to be the primary basis for that decision, the one that had made Marcus ask how long I had been doing this, had my name on it. Not the firm's name, not the managing director's name. My name, as primary author, as the person who would be presenting. Patricia had called me just a secretary on a Thursday evening. The following Friday morning, I was scheduled to present to a room of executives whose decision would define the firm's next 5 years. I went home from that dinner thinking about 11 years, about the rooms I had moved through, about the particular freedom of someone who has been underestimated for long enough that the underestimation has become irrelevant, everything except the moment when it becomes impossible to maintain. That moment was Friday, and I had been preparing for it for 6 years. The presentation was at 9 a.m. I had prepared for it the way I had prepared for everything important in my career. Thoroughly, completely, without the particular anxiety of someone who is uncertain about what they know. I knew what was in that document. I had built it. Every analysis, every recommendation, every projection had been constructed by me over 6 months of work that had begun before most people in that firm understood what the client was going to need. The room held 14 people. I stood at the head of it, and I presented for 57 minutes, not because the presentation required 57 minutes. It could have been done in 40, but because the questions that came from executives who were engaged and specific and clearly had read the pre-circulated document carefully, extended the conversation in the way that good work extends conversations. That produces questions because people want to understand it better, not because they are confused. I answered every question. At the end, in the particular quiet of a room that has finished something significant and is settling into what comes next, the lead executive, a woman named Catherine Park, who had been with the client organization for 20 years and who had, I had been told, never extended a meeting past its scheduled end time, looked at me across the table. "Ms. Marsh," she said, "I'd like to ask you something directly." Of course, I said. How much of this document did you write? All of it, I said. The analysis, the recommendations, the projections. I worked with the managing director on strategic alignment, but the document itself was my work. She looked at the managing director. He nodded. I see, Catherine Park said. She did not say anything further at the meeting. But what she did, 2 days later, in the formal communication, that confirmed the client's decision to extend and expand their relationship with the firm, was specific. The communication requested that I be designated as the primary relationship manager for the account, not the managing director, not a senior partner. Me. The managing director called me into his office when the communication arrived. He slid it across the desk. I read it. Congratulations, he said. I think we need to talk about your title. The conversation that followed was the one I had been working toward for 6 years. Not because I had been maneuvering, but because the work had been building toward it, and the work had finally reached the point where the title needed to catch up. Senior Relationship Director. A title that was not just a secretary. A title that reflected 11 years accurately. Marcus called me the evening after the announcement was made internally. I heard, he said. Yes, I said. Congratulations, he said. Genuinely. Thank you, I said, for not telling her before Friday. He laughed slightly. I figured you had a plan. I always have a plan, I said. Patricia called me 2 days after that. Not to apologize. Patricia does not lead with apologies. She called to congratulate me on what she described as my promotion. The word promotion delivered in the careful tone of someone who is revising their understanding of a situation in real time and has not yet completed the revision. Thank you, Aunt Patricia, I said. I didn't realize, she said, the extent of what you were doing there. I know, I said. You should have said something, she said. At dinner, the moment wasn't right, I said. A pause. And now, she said. Now the moment is right, I said. And you know? She was quiet for a moment. Yes, she said, I do. I have thought about that dinner table many times since then, about the wine glass, about the particular choice to say nothing in a room full of people who had heard something. That was wrong. About the 11 years that had been building toward a Friday morning presentation and a communication from Catherine Park and a title that reflected the truth. About Marcus, looking at his plate, saying nothing, understanding that the moment had not arrived yet, about the particular power of waiting for the right moment, rather than reacting in the wrong one. Here is what 11 years and a dinner table and 57 minutes in a conference room taught me. What people call you is not what you are. The person who is dismissed as just a secretary, just a wife, just a daughter, just a whatever the smallest version of you is in someone else's telling him is not defined by that telling. They are defined by the work, by the rooms they move through, by the documents that bear their name and the questions they answer and the clients who request them specifically. Let them call you what they call you. Build the record. And wait for Friday. My aunt called me just a secretary. Her son knew better than to agree. And on a Friday morning, in a room of 14 people, 57 minutes and one question from Catherine Park, the title caught up with the truth